So, Tim, if you look up the word toxic masculinity on Google, you'll find a list of the top 10 signs that your masculinity is toxic.
Okay.
So, I'm going to give you the top 10 things.
I should have taken that test before doing this, make sure I'm not toxic.
So, anyway, I'll just run through some of these.
Okay.
You comment anywhere you want to. Number 1, being stoic. Number 2, being promiscuous.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that potentially could show toxicity if you're being promiscuous.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right. But stoic, some men are just stoic, right? I mean, they're just going to be quieter or whatever. So this is a hard. 3, claiming homosexuality is irregular.
That seems in line with what culture would want you to believe, right? Because you got to, if men are the head of the house, you got to get them out so you can go for the children. And that includes reassigning children with new gender norms. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, in other words, if you're a toxic male, if you're against homosexuality,
right?
It's like, that's weird. Why claiming homosexuality is irregular makes you toxic. That makes you a toxic man. All right. No, maybe you just say, I'm a man, and a man is in a man's body, and when he is, he should be heterosexual.
So there's one bit of insight that men have into masculinity that women will never, is that they're men. We're wired differently. And in the area, and you see these videos on like TikTok and stuff where dads are stepping in front of a transgender, someone with an XY chromosome saying, hey, you're not going in the bathroom, my wife or kids are in there. Why? Because men understand how we're wired sexually different, more aggressive, more dominant, and can have negative or dangerous byproducts of our physiological wiring.
And it is dangerous for
dads are
a male to be in a women's restroom.
We're visually stimulated. We're very different. So
Yeah. Okay, number 4, being violent. Number 4, I'm sorry, being violent. Number 5, being dominant.
Well, I mean, it takes a little bit of dominance to get some stuff done at times. Now, dominance, though, you have to clarify. You can be dominant on the sports field, and that means you've worked the hardest, you've tried the hardest, and you care the most. So being dominant isn't always the underdog, someone who's not put their time in, that's just trying to put everyone else down. It can just be someone who wants to be the best. So
and violence. If a man is attacking me and or someone's hurting me, I want my husband to become violent. I want him to come. So these are God-given traits that when they're channeled toward the right thing can be a blessing. And if it's channeled in the wrong way,
and let's be realistic,
harm a child, harm a person.
These traits fall into either gender, either of the two that of toxic people, being violent or being, these
aren't male.
These are not all exclusively male.
Right. 6, being sexually aggressive.
Yeah, I mean that can be either way, but yeah, men are more commonly. And here's something that people have to realize: as we are living into a more sexualized culture, that statistic is going to continue to increase. The more of these young girls that are doing their OnlyFans page to make money, and by the way, they're not off the hook for their behavior.
No, they are not.
And so yes, the more we sexualize culture,
but we don't say toxic femininity or toxic sexuality.
Well, that'd be offensive.
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, yes. And what we reap from this as we continue to head into this toxic world that we're living into is more dangerous things. I mean, our culture is very sexualized and is continuing to do so.
And the government would have nothing to do with that, right? I mean, they can monitor our social media for anything they don't like politically, but they can't stop pornographers.
Right.
I don't buy it.
Yeah, so you remember going during the COVID thing. In fact, it's still slightly amusing when you go back and look at the reels of some of the stuff that made no sense, like the people playing a clarinet in school with their mask cut open. So it's just, that stuff is just ridiculous. But you kind of see the hypocrisy of where we're leading into. So if you posted something that was negative about the vaccine or COVID, they would pull that post down.
They're on you, but they can't take down child pornography or those that are stalking kids on social media. This is weird. Yeah. Okay, number 7, not crying. You're a toxic male if you're not.
There could be some truth that is unhealthy that men don't cry, but at the same time, in the moment. What's the statement? It's better to be a warrior in the garden than a gardener in war. Like, there is some element of, look, in the moment, there is a way we have to behave in the moment. We can't, if 90% of our police officers are men, actually over 90%, well, in the moment, sometimes there has to be a standard. We can cry about it later, okay? Right. But, so yes, men overly.
Ecclesiastes says it. there's a time to cry
Yeah.
and a time
Cry
not
later.
to cry.
So yes, it's not healthy for men not to
Right.
let their emotions out, but they do tend to work through those emotions more internally.
And in the moment
before
when
they
they've
let
got to
them
be a
out.
warrior,
Yeah.
they have to do what's needed, which is why God made men and women different.
Yep.
We need that warrior male in that moment. We need that man to be able to step in there, but there may be PTSD later and he may need to cry.
Right. Yep.
Number 8, not being a feminist ally makes you a toxic male, Tim.
What does that even mean?
I don't even know.
A feminist ally.
The feminists are not even an ally of women.
No,
So how does
yeah.
that, I mean, the whole thing is bizarre. They aren't even coming to the aid of women whose sports are being canceled.
I'm an ally of femininity in the way that God designed it. I'm an ally with my wife.
Well
we
said.
both, right? So feminists though, there's too many
My thinking on feminists.
writing between the lines, too many things in there that.
Yeah, I no longer, I don't even think most women want to be called a feminist anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, except those toxic women.
Right,
Anyway, no.
exactly, yeah.
Number 9, being a risk taker makes you a toxic male.
Men are more risk takers.
And we need that.
I mean, if you're thankful for any of the things that we experience today, you look at the Panama Canal and some of these historic features, the St. Louis Arch, a lot of men died building those things. The Panama Canal, thousands, like the crazy number, thousands of people. The risk taking has decreased over the years because we can afford to. We live in a way where, if you wanted to settle, you look at the stories of the settlers in some of these areas. I mean, you didn't know you were going to survive this. You were on your own.
Right.
And so that was
And
part
they
of it.
protected the women and children so they could survive.
Yep.
And now in our culture, we have women that are not surviving and children that are not surviving,
Yeah.
taking their lives, destruction, pain, emotional brokenness,
Yeah.
higher drug addictions among women as well.
Right.
So this is the not surviving because we don't have men taking risks. Okay, the last one, 10.
Okay.
Not engaging in household chores makes you a toxic male.
I think that some truth to that. You go back in the earlier years of the country and stuff, and guys didn't change diapers, and they didn't do that. I do think more commonly today, most younger men are helping in any way they can. Not all of them, but
if
they
it goes
do.
back to survival,
Right.
I would rather change the diaper and have my husband out building the fences and doing some
There's
of the
some humor in that
things.
for Alicia and I. Okay, so we are sliding more into traditional gender roles.
Why? Because you have a farm.
We bought a big farm, and I'm telling you, there's a lot of stuff that she can't do.
Yeah.
And so at this point, she's taking more and more responsibility in these areas. And I'm taking more, because a lot of it's just pain and suffering in the sense of sweat and hard work for me. And for her, it's pain and suffering because she's.
Well, that's toxic, Tim.
And it is what it is, because
No,
I'm
you're
100 and
she's
some
glad
pounds
for you
bigger
to
than
do
her.
it.
Right. And
She's glad for you to do that.
exactly. And so that is kind of we look through today's lens at yesterday's decisions, and it doesn't quite work because it was so, you go back 100 years ago. We're living in a cabin that was built in the late 1820s, right? And so when you look at the life they had, it's one room. Now, it was added on to, thank God we're not living in one room, but you recognize the life they lived, and they didn't have the tools and they didn't have the things. They worked incredibly hard just to survive. And they would probably laugh at these conversations we have today
yes.
because they would, you're going to go cut firewood and I'm going to cook.
Just
That's
like
just
when they
the way
went
it's
into
going to
an
have to be.
African tribe and we're talking about turning men into women and women to men. Those
They
guys
laughing
were
at
like,
them.
they were
"This is
laughing.
the craziest thing."
Yes, and it is crazy. It could only seem normal because we have celebrities in media,
Yeah.
brainwashing in
live a
schools, and
bubble-wrapped life,
medical,
too.
all brainwashing people to believe that a man should become a woman should become a man, that men are toxic if they have these 10 things.
Right.
Anyway, so
Yeah,
you're right.
it's fun.
In history, they could not have lived that life because of the necessity.
Right. It's like Californians advocating for grizzly bears, and they have grizzly bears on their. And I'm sorry, I love California. It's the state. The
We
people
love you,
there.
folks.
Okay, but anyway.
No, there's some awesome people.
But the grizzly bears on their state flag, but they don't want grizzly bears. So they'll advocate for grizzly bears in Montana,
But
just
not in their backyard.
not where they originally lived in California, because we don't want to be eaten by them.
Yeah.
It's that same type of scenario. We want the good, but we don't want to have to deal with the reality of how we're attacking these topics.
Yes,
So.
which becomes nonsense
Yeah.
instead of common sense.
Yep, that's it.